Over the summer, I've designed Xbox controllers for over 30 games, and now you guys might just think of my channel as the Controller Guys channel, which is alright, but I'm not entirely sure you guys appreciate the majesty of the design of the Xbox Series controller, which is what I'm going to break down today because it is just a perfect piece of hardware that I think needs to be shared with everyone. Did you know that the original Duke Xbox controller won the Guinness World Records title for the largest game controller ever? This thing was massive, but unfortunately we're not here to talk about the Duke controller. Today we're here to talk about the Xbox Series controller, mainly for the Xbox Series X and S version. The one you see on screen is the Xbox Series S controller because that's the one I have, and I honestly think this is a technological marvel in the world of gaming. Before we dive too deep into that controller, let's take a look at some of the other controllers and compare the two. I think comparing is justifiable basically because there's only a few different controllers you can select when you want to look into gaming controllers. First off, let's look at the Stadia controller. For the 5 of you that played Stadia and have held this controller, it looks weird. It looks like a copy of the Xbox controller, but it looks too smooth and honestly too rounded. I've never played on a Stadia, and I've also never held this controller because I respect myself too much, but the Stadia controller just looks like it was made in 2010, and with the console's horrible performance, the weirdos who played Stadia probably also blamed on the weird controller. Next up is the Nintendo Joy-Con, and honestly, it's way too small. That's my only problem with it. Yes, the Joy-Con is an incredible invention, giving you opportunities to switch which kind of controllers you want to use, but it's just way too small, and don't even get me started with those awful attachments that people sell on the internet. And also the Pro controllers just don't feel like a controller. The same problem happens with the Stadia controller, only I've held this Pro controller for the Switch. It's too curvy, it's too smooth, it doesn't feel like a controller. I feel like my hands are going to slip out of it if they get even a little bit sweaty, but I just don't like it. It doesn't feel like a controller, and again, it's also way too small. This one's going to give me a lot of hate, the DualShock 5 controller. By the way, go down in the comments below and tell me how much you hate my opinion, or like my opinion. The DualShock 5 controller, it's not great. Honestly, it feels too big and too small at the same times. I feel like I can wrap my hands around the controller, but my thumbs don't go where they're supposed to, and the controller is way too heavy. Holding this controller in my own life, I know that this controller feels more like I'm holding an actual weapon than something to play games with. It is not fun holding this controller. And I know a bunch of you are going to run down in the comments and say, but it's a technological marvel. Whoop-de-doo, you have a touchpad that is on the top of the controller. What does it do when you push it? It takes you back to the home menu. That's a waste of space. I don't know. Oh, the gyroscope is super fun and cool and useful. You know what else is fun, cool, and useful? Lawsuits from the gyroscope because the controller drifts too much. I could go on forever, but the DualShock 5 controller is not the best. Yes, it is an improvement from the PS4 controller, but it is not the best controller when it comes to gaming. And lastly, we have the Steam controller. Honestly, just use a keyboard and mouse. Don't use this controller. Don't waste your money. Go find another controller in the house from the Xbox 360 era. Good grief. Before I start the last segment, I just want to say I'm not sponsored by Xbox. I would really like to be Xbox. If you want to partner up, that would be super cool. But for all of you commenting, I've never been affiliated with Xbox, at least not in a financial sense. With that being said, the Xbox Series controller is near perfect. It's also an added bonus that you can customize it. I've been customizing a bunch of controllers for myself, and it's also just the perfect feel. Apparently, Xbox designed Xbox One controller and put over $100 million into R&Ding the Xbox One controller. With that being said, one of the biggest complaints I've heard about the Xbox Series controller is how similar it feels to the Xbox One controller. Well, yes, I agree with the statement. The Xbox Series controller improves on the Xbox One controller in all the crucial of ways. The Xbox Series controller feels a lot more grippier and you can feel it better. It's also a tiny bit more heavier, which gives it that good balance and weight to it. And the biggest thing is the mini USB to USB-C charging port, which you can also use in the difference of ways. Whether you're connecting from a wired connection, do a little faster connections on the computer, or you're just playing for your Xbox and want to give it a little bit of charge, I especially love the addition of being able to add batteries or not use batteries. If you want to charge up right away and you need to play games right now, then just throw a couple AA batteries. If you're going to be away for a little bit, you can buy your trusty little Xbox charging pack, and that's all you need. You charge that up, and it works really well. The Xbox Battery Pack has a very good battery life that'll sustain your gaming, and you can choose to do batteries as well. It's super cool. This feels like the best machine to game on, especially when you're gaming on those newer gen consoles. And as always, I'm SavageSkull. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you on the flip side.